Hello and welcome to the Sprouted Dreams podcast. I'm Abigail, your fairy godmother, helping to simplify your fairy garden plans. Sometimes starting a new fairy or gnome garden can feel like a huge undertaking. There's too many choices in miniature homes and all the different mushrooms, plus so many different characters. And then you have all the plants to fill in, and you can feel overwhelmed. If this is happening, whether you're a new fairy gardener or a seasoned one, why don't you try a color-themed garden? By using a color theme, you don't end up with yellow flowers and then pink flowers and red toadstools and then a blue mushroom house and gnomes and purple dragons and yellow dog fairies. You can see how this can become a real mishmash of parts, and then there are too many things in there that don't really match together, and the eye does not appreciate the garden as a whole. Whereas if you use a color theme, everything looks appealing, and your decision fatigue just disappears. So I'm going to suggest a few plants in the podcast today, and I will also put this into an article in the Fairy Garden Journal section over at sprouteddreams.com. So consider looking at some of the extra lists over there. And you might want to print it out also and add your own favorites because there's just too many flowers to go into. But this will give you a few ideas to get started with. You could go with a color theme that goes with a holiday, like red for Valentine's Day, or certainly all the plants with the green, red, and green could be for Christmas. Or maybe you want to go with a yellow theme for summer, or a pink Mother's Day potted plant. Whatever you decide, adding some bright and beautiful flowers that complement each other makes your selection easier. So let's start with a yellow theme. Yellow flowers are prevalent in springtime with daffodils, black-eyed Susan vine, yarrow, Johnny jump up, sunflowers. And of course, you can always add roses into almost any fairy garden display because they come in both standard sizes as well as miniature. You can also add any type of vegetable that would match with your color theme. So for yellow, you could add pear tomatoes or crookneck squash, yellow zucchini, all add that splash of yellow color. Then you coordinate your miniatures with perhaps some pale yellow mushrooms, a yellow fairy, and perhaps a cheery, bright fairy house. Then finish it all off with a few little details like a bench or a pond or perhaps a swing, and all of this makes a beautiful display that doesn't confuse you or the person that's looking at your fairy garden. For a red theme, you can get a very bold and passionate look. If you really love red, you may want to go with some different flowers like geraniums or tulips, coxcomb, and again, roses. Just remember that you can always stick with a very basic theme because you'll add even more color with your miniatures. In fact, red is a perfect first-time fairy garden color because a potted plant with some red geraniums and maybe a miniature red rose can have a toadstool house and a red fairy and some little toadstool mushrooms that are in picks, and voila, you've got a complete fairy garden with almost no thought or difficulty. Now, if you want to tone down the red and bring it down a notch to pink, you can still use geraniums and roses, but you can also add camellias, peonies, hummingbird flowers, and stock. Stock is a beautiful flower if you like to have flowers that smell good. Those are all great choices for a pink garden. Just keep in mind with pinks that you don't want to have very light pinks like an azalea plant with fuchsia type pinks in the same garden. You almost have to make the light pinks in one garden and then the darker ones in another. So keep in mind not to mix your pinks too much. If you want to just go very classic and timeless, or for a winter theme, white flowers can always be used. Try the roses. And a variety of alyssums are wonderful to use because they not only make clumps of beautiful white flowers, but if you give them a bit of time, they can trail over the sides of the pot. There are endless possibilities of flowers that are white, but you could use lily of the valley or tulip or camellias, or even some of the alliums, which are an onion type of plant. They're a little bulb, and you might be able to find some that are edible and also make a nice flower. So there you get a combination. Now, if you want to go a little bit more complex, go for the opposite of white and make a black themed fairy garden. Yes, there are black flowers. They're really kind of a dark purple, but it still gives that sort of passionate look or something very deep and fantasy-like, maybe perhaps with elves and dragons. Black hollyhocks, morning glories, tulips, and roses can all be found in the color black. If you want to go a bit lighter than the black flowers, you can go with purple. Purple flowers come like pink in a variety from very light lavender all the way to the hollyhocks. So keep in mind that you want to keep your purples in the same realm. Lavender, roses, hollyhocks, iris, butterfly bush, and again, stock and snapdragons can all be used in purple-themed fairy gardens. Now, I want to take a moment to mention the blue color because blue flowers are not very common in the floral world. And when you talk about a natural blue flower, there are very few. So keep that in mind with your miniatures that you may want to use just a few blue flowered plants and then get more blues from the characters, doors, and houses that you add. Darling little blue flowers come from baby blue eyes, violets, Johnny jump ups, borage, rosemary, and flax. And I really, really love flax. It's such a pretty, pretty flower. It has a moderate height and it's very grassy. Super pretty. You will love it and the birds will love it too. It gives these delightful little blue flowers that sway in the wind, and I would highly recommend it if you have not tried flax before. Choosing a color-themed fairy garden can really help to get you out of a rut, make a quick garden for a friend, or just get a cleaner look to your displays. So I hope that you will try one soon. Until next week, happy fairy gardening. This podcast has been brought to you by Sprouted Dreams. Please head over to sprouteddreams.com for a complete list of the flowers and plants that I have mentioned today, and check out all the other tutorials and items that I have at sprouteddreams.com.